Basi Legani Tafshin Mem Daled. We left off at the second page of the Maimer Ois Beis, page Chav Ches. So again, the beginning of the Maimer is mainly reviewing, a little bit of elaboration, but primarily reviewing the concepts that are the beginning of the Hemshech of Basi Legani of the Friedrich Rebbe, until he will come, in a few oisios, he will come to speak about Perek Yudalet. We'll go through quickly a lot of these parts. According to the well-known saying of the Chazal, that it says that Hashem had a great plot and scheme on people, meaning that the Chazal say that pasuk, that there was a great plot and scheming against people, is referring to the Chet Eitzadas, that the Chet Eitzadas was in such a type of way that Hashem plotted it and really tried to make it happen. Obviously, other magicians still had Bechira Chavshis, had free choice, but it was he was practically led to do the Aved of the Chet Eitzadas. And the Rebbe expands it, not just the Chet Eitzadas, but by extension perhaps, all the other things that caused the Shekhinah to ascend all the seven Rekim. Moving, it's understood, Sheshiva and Yonam Abilti Ritzuim, that the seven unwanted things, Maschel Mechet Eitzadas, beginning from the sin of the Eitzadas, Vasiluv Shnas Al Yodam, and the departure of the Shekhinah that took place through these seven things that we say every single Aveda caused the Shekhinah to go up higher and higher, more and more, further and further away from us. Hoy B'Kavonat Chila was by an initial intent. And Hashem intended this to take place. That this descent was for the sake of an elevation. Why did Hashem want the ascent? It seems to be counterintuitive. We're saying that Hashem initially was down here, and then eventually he is going to be down here. Why would there be an intention for the Eibusher to ascend? Because the Eibusher wanted that it should be through the avoid of the Yidden. That's why he says, Basi Legani achoisi kala, my sister, my bride. Not only I've come to my garden, my sister, my bride, he's talking to us. Or he's come to the garden of my sister to be together with my sister, my bride. But he wants that the coming to the garden, that the Basi Legani should be a result of Yidden's avoid of achoisi kala. Because the drawing down of the primary Shekhinah down here below through the avoid of Yidden is much higher than the way it was on its own at the beginning of the creation. The reason why this is so much higher, that there is a gain to be had only when Yidden are the ones that bring it down, and that's why Hashem maneuvered things and plotted that instead of it remaining the Shekhinah down here, so he put all different types of things about that the Shekhinah should leave so that we should draw it down. So he says, what's the advantage of us bringing it down? So he says, since that which is drawn down after the leaving of the Shekhinah comes about through the avoid of transforming darkness to light. When the darkness is transformed to light, only through that becomes an additional and greater light, like the Rebbe always brings down, that the greatness and the more powerful light is when it comes from the darkness itself to the darkness itself turns into light. Avoid tzaddikim, top of the next page, similar to the advantage of tshuva over avoid of tzaddikim, because tzaddikim just deal with the light; they don't deal with darkness whatsoever. The Baal Tshuva takes this doinus, takes the avedus, and transforms it into mitzvahs. He deals with transformation of darkness to light. That's why the makom shabal tshuva in a place where Baal Tshuva stand, ain't tzaddikim gemurim michayil mamed. Tzaddikim can't reach over there. Where do we see that this is this more powerful light? Through dealing with the darkness and subjugating the darkness. So he brings from the Zohar. The Frierdiker Rebbe brings in this Maimer from the Zohar. Maimer, like it says in the Zohar, Kadaskafi Sitra Achra, when the Sitra Achra becomes subjugated, Istalik Yikard Kuchabrichu B'chol Almin, so the glory of the Eibishter ascends in all the worlds. Through the avoida of sublimating the klippa, and even more so transforming the klippa, it comes down a much greater revelation of light than what was there initially at the beginning of creation, when it was Iker Shechina B'tachtoinim, before anything went wrong. What is an expression of that greatness of the light? It's such a great light that the manner in which it reveals itself is in a way of being exalted, in an exalted state. That's why it says istalik, ascends, that the glory of the Eibishter ascends, instead of saying that the glory of the Eibishter is drawn down into the world through the avodah v'skafi and eshabcha. Ascending indicates that it's such a powerful light that it's in a very exalted and high way. That's also the reason why the beginning of the building of the Mishkan is in the matters of the Kroshim, the beams, the boards that support it. It's not the entire Mishkan, and to a certain degree, according to Halacha, it's not the main part of the Mishkan. The main part of the Mishkan is the hides, the animal hides that were on top, etc. But the beginning part of the Mishkan, you first had to set up the walls. The walls are the Kroshim. So that's the Haskalah. That's the beginning of the making of the Mishkan. Perhaps that's what the Rebbe is trying to indicate with the word Haskalah. And what's the idea of these boards and beams? The Kedesh, who Oisius Sheker. The letters Kedesh is the same letters like the word for falsehood, Al Shubatziruf, Acher, but it's in a different combination. Instead of being Shin Kufreish, it's Kufrei Shin. The Rebbe says, why do I call it Acher? Acher itself indicates a matter of negativity. Acher daika, hepech inyan echad. It's the opposite of the idea of echad. The Chazal say about if someone, a little smidgen of a mistake can be machriv oilamus. If instead of writing Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, you miss over there that little piece on top of the Dalet, and it becomes a reish. So then you're saying, I believe in a Kel Acher, I believe in another God, Chas v'sholom. So Acher is the opposite of Echad, of the oneness of Hashem. So that's what it means, that Kedesh and Sheker is B'tziruf Acher, in a more homiletic way that I was saying. So it's another combination, another meaning having to do with klippas and so on. So that other combination outside the realm of Kedusha, our job is to take it and put it in the Mishkan. The avodah is we shall make the kroshim for the Mishkan, the Kedesh, you have to take it and place it in the Mishkan out of standing shittim wood. And what does that mean? The olam li is Mishkan, to transform the falsehood of the world, and instead it should be a beam of the Mishkan. And the fact that it calls it Atzei Shittim is also the message, the foolishness, the folly of the other side, the opposite side, L'shtus the Kedusha, to the folly of Kedusha, Atzei Shittim, that you're taking the Shittim wood and you're using it in holiness, that you're going beyond reason and beyond intellect in your service of Hashem. Through taking the clip and transforming it to Kedusha, becomes the drawing down of the main Shechina down here below in a much higher way than it was at the beginning of the creation. That's why Hashem organized it and made it in such a type of way that the Shechina should leave, and like he put all these types of things in the way with the Chet Hadas and so on, because the Eibishter wanted to have the ultimate type of Amshacha, the Amshacha that comes from us subjugating Klip. The Rebbe now continues in the Maimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Kais Gimel and Mamshach B'Maimer, and the Maimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe continues. Shal Shem Zen Nikroim Yisrael Tzivus Havayah, for this reason, because of our avodah in transforming the world and transforming Klippah to Kedusha, so that's why we are called the army of Havayah. Like it says, in the midst of this day, all the armies of Hashem went out from the land of Mitzrayim. We say in our parsha, we can explain the connection between the army of Hashem and this idea of transforming the klippah, bringing it into the Mishkan, and so on. So he says, the fact that the Yidden are not hindered or affected by the darkness and the falsehood of the world, and not only are they not stopped by it, just the opposite, they transform it to holiness. That's through the avoid of self-sacrifice and accepting the yoke of heaven. Therefore, they're called an army, lashon chayil, from the word a soldier. In other words, a soldier has these two things: kabbalas oil, he follows orders, he does what he's told. Period. And another aspect of a soldier is even more so self-sacrifice. He's willing to give up his life and everything of his life for the mission, for the purpose. So that's that is the means how we are able to counter the sheker of the world and turn it into Keresh. That's also why the description of the Yidden as the army of Hashem is specifically connected with going on Mitzrayim. This description of the Yidden being called the army of Hashem was given to Yidden specifically when they left Mitzrayim. Why? What does it have to do specifically with going on Mitzrayim? So too, it doesn't just apply to Golos Mitzrayim, but also it applies to all the Golias Shenikru Hashem Mitzrayim Al Shem Shemitziris LiYisrael, that they are called by the name Mitzrayim. How come? Because they oppress, they make it difficult and uncomfortable for the Yidden. So really, all Golos are called Mitzrayim for that inner meaning of the word Meitzar, constriction. In Yiddish, they machen ein Yiddishkeit in Yidden. They make uncomfortable Judaism and Jews. Hiba'oifen is in such a manner. What is the avoida there? What is the avoida in Golos is in such a manner, top of page Lamed, the Kabbalas oil Mesiris Nefesh Dafkish is in its voice, Lashon Chayil. Specifically, how do we counter and deal with Mitzrayim? How do we deal with Golos? We need to do it in a way of accepting the yoke, and we have to have self-sacrifice, just like an army has these types of characteristics. And the Frierdiker Rebbe continues to explain why Yidden are called the army of Hashem. It's not identical to the name of Hashem, known as one of Hashem's names. It's Tzvokos. There's the name Tzvokos that are called one of the 7 names. It's a holy name. It's one of the 7 names that one cannot erase. Just like you can't erase Yud Kei Vav Kei or Elikim or Kael, you can't erase the name Tzvokos. The Shems and this Gal Idea Nevim. Tzvokos was only revealed by the Nevim. Chana, and the mother of Shmuel, when she sang Shira to Hashem, she used the term Tzvokos. But before Navi, Aval B'Torah, in Chamish Chumshei Torah, Loinis Geshem Tzvokos. It's not mentioned Hashem's name of Tzvokos. What is the thing that we do have? It's called the army of Hashem. It's not like a descriptive name of Hashem or a name for Hashem like Hashvaya Tzvokos, like Chana said over there, but rather it is a description for Yidden, or it's a term used for Yidden. Alakoy al Yisrael Shem Tzivus Havaya. It's going on the Yidden that they are the army of Havaya. So here he says a very interesting term, Lashon Samuch, that it's close to it. In Hebrew, when you use the word army, you would say Tzava. Tziv Ois means that it's connected to something else. Tziv Ois Havaya means it's something auxiliary to Havaya. It's the army of Havaya. that the army is ancillary to, it's auxiliary to Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. What does that mean? Beruchnis and Yonim, and this is part of the avoida of Yidden and Golas. V'hainu bechinas hanitzoitzim shenizbaru begols Mitzrayim. The Tzivus Havaya is not just referring to Klal Yisrael, but it's also referring to all the sparks. Tzivus is also translated as hosts, many things. All the sparks that were refined in the Golos Mitzrayim, v'nis'alu likol b'shem Havaya, and they were elevated to become part of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's Tzivus Havaya. When the Yidden were in Mitzrayim, they're called the army of Hashem because they raised an army for Hashem, meaning they raised all the sparks to come part of Yud Kei Vav Kei. So the Rebbe goes on more about this topic about the elevation of the sparks that took place in Mitzrayim to bring it up to the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. Second paragraph, line 12. The idea behind this is the Hine avoid the Beretz Mitzrayim hilevarer ulahalis zanitzoitis to Mitzrayim ervas haaretz. The avoida in Mitzrayim is to actually any question. The idea behind this is the Hine avoid the Beretz Mitzrayim hilevarer ulahalis zanitzoitis to Mitzrayim ervas haaretz. The avoid in the land of Mitzrayim is to refine and to elevate the sparks of Mitzrayim, which was the most immoral place on the earth. These sparks were initially in a complete state of concealment and covering. The root of all concealments and all coverings is from the name Elikim, which is also known as B'gematria Hateva. It's the numerical equivalent of the word Hateva. Aleph Lamed Hey Yud Mem is the Gematria of Hateva. So, therefore, the idea of nature, you don't see godliness open. So that's the same idea of Elikim is about covering over nature. Now here he's going to ask, covering over godliness the way it's hidden in nature. So here the Rebbe is going to ask a very simple thing. Elikim is godliness. Elikim is from the word Elikus. What do you mean that it's about covering and hiding? It's godliness. So he's saying in line 17, Vagam shalikim l'shoin Elikus. Though Elikim is, let's look at the meaning. It's godliness. Burak begematria hateva. It's only gematria of hateva. It's a very important thing to note that people don't realize when we talk about gematrias. Gematrias is a concealed thing. It doesn't undo or take away from the simple meaning of the word. So, therefore, you have a certain word, and the word means one thing, and the gematria means another. So what does it mean the main thing of the word is? That what the word is. The gematria is something else, is something lower, etc., concealed, whatever. So what does it mean when you look at the name Elikim and you say Elikim means godliness? Gematria is Hateva. So what does that message, that juxtaposition mean? So he says, Hainu shi yoisei Elikus hu by begilu. The fact that it's godliness, that's revealed. The level or the aspect that it's teva is concealed. Sharak merum is by gematria. It's only hinted in the gematria. This is a very important point to remember. The simple meaning is godliness. So how are you identifying Elikim with concealment and covering and so on? The simple meaning of Elikim is godliness. It's only hidden in there, there's the idea of nature which conceals ungodliness. But that's not the main meaning of the word. So the Rebbe says, how do I justify that what I'm saying that Elikim is the idea of concealment, and that's why the sparks were concealed was because of Shem Elikim. So he says in line 21, Mikol Malkum still in all, Hareu shoyrish umakir lateva. The Shem Elikim, even though it's godliness, it is the root and source for nature. What is the idea of what Shem Elokim accomplishes, what's the idea of the Teva. That the godly light comes in many constrictions, concealments, and coverings. That's the idea of nature from the word that it sunk, it drowned in the sea. That its nature, it has the level of godliness is sunken in over there. That the light of godliness is so embedded and so drowned in the concealment and the covering, very much so, like it's explained in the 13th chapter of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Hemshech Abbas Legani. This is all Mitzrayim before the Yidden engage with Mitzrayim. They have through the avoid of the army of Hashem by using the bittul of Kabbalah soil. Tzvois, Moshe Chaya, like we said, tzvois is the word an army. So then so then the sparks become refined, top of page Lamed Aleph, Umis Alim L'Kedusha, and they now ascend to Kedusha. What does that mean? They leave the ultimate concealment, and they become part of the revelation of Shem Yudke Vovke Tzivas Havai Shalomayim Mateva, the level of Tzivas Havai that's beyond nature. So that's what we said before. Alakim represents nature in whatever way, however that happens through the many tzimtzumim, but it has to do with nature. The level of the sparks before they're elevated, the way they're concealed. Shem Havai is about transcending nature. So when we elevate the sparks, we are causing the level to be Tzivos Havai. We're causing all these hosts of sparks to become tuffle to and part of Shem Yudke Vavke. The Seder Havodah, who the Rebbe says in line 3, the order of the Havodah is that we don't have to wait for the sparks to be elevated after we leave Mitzrayim. While we are still yet in the darkness of Golos. So it says by Makas Choshech, it says, behold, all the Yidden had light in their settlements. Not just in their own 4 cubits, in their own location. Rather, in every single place that a Jewish person entered, even in the home of an Egyptian, so the light followed the Jew, came in, and it illuminated for the Yidden things that the Mitzri hid in the barrels of Atavis and the cabinets of Matmonius and other hidden places. So this was the revelation that already took place in Mitzrayim. This was the preparation for them emptying out of Mitzrayim, the refinement of all the sparks that were in Mitzrayim. In other words, that how were they able, as the Rashi explains and so on, how are they able to know and to influence their neighbors to lend them something? Because if the neighbors claimed ignorance, they didn't know that, I don't know, we don't have such a thing, whatever, when they wanted to borrow silver and gold and so on. So the Yid said, in that closet, on that shelf, you have this and this thing. So, in other words, the fact that a Yid would enter a Mitzri's house with the light to illuminate was actually part of the process of the elevation of the sparks. Then the Rebbe goes on and says there was a further state of elevation of the sparks, following the elevation of the sparks that took place when they first left Mitzrayim. 7 days later at the Yam Suf, the loot that they took at the Yam Suf was greater than the loot that they took at Mitzrayim. Meaning, why was it in such a type of way? Why was there this type of delay and distinction? And first there was one set of sparks that they elevated. Then a week later, when they were already out of Mitzrayim, they elevated another set of sparks. So he says, "V'hainu." This means those sparks that the Yidden were incapable of refining earlier, of elevating earlier. How come? Why weren't they able to elevate it earlier? Because they were in an ultimate state of concealment. Even more so than the sparks that were in all types of treasures and concealments of the Egyptians that were revealed through the light. These sparks, Pari himself brought them. It says that Pari himself encouraged his nation, and he himself adorned his chariots and so on with all the treasures and so on. And what was the real reason behind it? So the Yidden should be able to refine them with the loot that they took and collected at the sea. The Chalzeh and all of this, the elevation of the sparks from Mitzrayim that took place in Mitzrayim, the elevation of the sparks in Mitzrayim that were so concealed that they didn't get a chance to elevate it until 7 days later at the Yam Suf, brought them and was a preparation for Matan Torah. Like it says, Vayasa Moshe Yisrael mi Yam Suf Gomer, that Moshe made the Yidden travel from Yam Suf. He made them travel from the loot at the sea to Matan Torah, because one was a precursor, was an introduction, it was a stepping stone to the other. So now getting back to the general idea of Tzivus Havaya, indicating the elevation of the sparks, Zoi Klolos Havoida, the Tzivus Havaya. That's a general avoid of the army of Havaya, and also going on the hosts of Havaya, all these different sparks, Legalis, Levader, or Lahalis, Mitzoitis, Choyabataksahel, to reveal and to refine and to elevate the sparks that were in a total state of concealment. By days and Nasadir Lois Baruch B'tachtoinim, through that it occurred and it was made for the Eibishter home down here below. B'tachtoinim mamish, literally below. Like the language of the Alter Rebbe, B'tachn shein tachn l'mata menu, something that's so far below that there's nothing below it whatsoever. Let's make a little bit of a dent in Ois Dalet. So he says in line 26, bottom of the page, Ois Dalet, or the Havana, you need to be able to understand this matter. Though the light is so sunken in, so drowned in, so embedded in such a covering and concealment to such a degree, through avodah, it comes out to a revealed state. For this, the one whose yard it is, the Friedrich Rebbe explains in chapter 14, the chapter that corresponds to what we're learning this year, Shnasa Yudalad B'Pam Ashniya. It was in Tavshim Mem Daled in 1984. It was the second cycle of learning through the entire Maimer Basar Legani. So it's the second time the Rebbe was saying a Maimer and explaining Ois Yudalad. Kiflayim L'Tushia, the idea that it's second shows that double for strength and power. So now he's quoting from the Friedrich Rebbe. So he says, V'hinei, he says, B'chol Zois V'atem Achayes Kulum K'tziv. Despite the fact that godliness may be concealed, still and all it says, you give life to all. The Oris, Oiralaki, Ari Nimshak, Lahavis, or Lahachis is called on Ivroim Me'ayin Liyesh, that the ray of the godly light is drawn down to bring into being and to give life to all creatures from nothing to something. Ukidisa B'Geras HaKodesh Siman Chof, like it's brought on Tanya in the Geras HaKodesh chapter 20, that speaks in depth about the creation of Yesh Me'ayin. That says, that the ray of the ray of the ray, Ubechol HaNivroim V'Noitzim V'Nasim, is in all creations and all things that were formed and all things that were made, meaning worlds of Bri, Tzirasiyah, all of it have a ray of godliness in it. It's the godly light and life force that's drawn down in all creations. That this godly life force comes down and it illuminates and draws down also in the most lowest levels. Like it says in Esek Shemaim Shema'ata, if I spread out the heavens, there you are. When I spread out the grave, There you are also Shenimshach B'chol Seder Ishtalshos Madrega, that Hashem comes down in all the chain order of descent from one level to another level, Ad Madregas Brui Mayosech Shvalim, until the lowest creations. Will be a Chaylis Kol Adam Va'Adam Gama Pashut B'Yoser Leida Zois. And it's the capability of every single person, even the most simple in knowledge, to know this. Ad Kan L'Shoinoi, up till here, is the language, what he's quoting from the Frierdiker Rebbe, and as we'll go on tomorrow, the Rebbe is going to elaborate on this topic further.